Okay, so you've been studying English for a while now.
Right.
You're past the beginner stuff, you know the grammar, you got thousands of words, but you've hit that wall.
Hmm.
You know that feeling. You open your mouth to speak, and it just feels slow, like this huge internal effort, kind of awkward, definitely not natural.
Yeah.
Why, after
Yeah.
all that work, why does real fluency still feel so far off?
It also always boils down to one really core habit that's just dragging you down,
Which is,
that constant mental translation cycle. Thinking in your native language first,
Yeah.
and then trying to push that thought through some kind of English filter before you actually say anything.
okay. That mental barrier, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're
Right.
pulling our insights mainly from Julian Northbrook's work, Think English, Speak English, it's really focused. But let's be super clear who this is for.
Yeah, good point. This isn't about drilling grammar rules
Oh,
again.
no.
Our mission here is specifically for you if you're at that intermediate to advanced level. You need to make that crucial mental shift. That's what unlocks communication that feels, well, effortless.
Exactly. We're unpacking those cognitive traps, the ones that traditional learning methods sometimes accidentally make worse.
They really can strengthen that translation habit.
Totally. And we want to show you the path to stop translating and actually start thinking directly in English.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay, so let's unpack that translation cycle first. It sounds straightforward, maybe, but it's a real killer for just having a normal conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Most people think they just translate, but the source, Northbrook, breaks it down into this like really grueling multi-step thing. Can you walk us through those steps?
Yeah, it's genuinely draining when you look at it. So first, obviously, you have the thought in your native language. That's step one.
Okay.
Second, you have to mentally search for and find the English words for those specific words.
Right, the vocabulary lookup.
Exactly. Then third, and this is really where the bottleneck happens, you have to recall the English grammar rules that apply, and then mentally build the sentence, put it in the right order,
While still holding the original thought in your head.
while trying to keep that translated thought in your short-term memory until you finally manage to speak it out loud.
Wow. Just describing it sounds exhausting.
It really is. Northbrook calls it mental gymnastics, and it's just, well, it's completely unsustainable if the conversation is moving at anything close to a natural pace.
Yeah, you just get left behind.
He uses this great case study, a client named May. Her English was grammatically pretty solid.
Mm.
But because she was constantly forcing her brain through that three-stage loop, translate, recall rules, apply rules, her speech was just full of long pauses.
Stilted.
Yeah, stilted phrasing, just a generally awkward delivery. It wasn't smooth.
So May's issue wasn't really a lack of knowledge, was it? It was pure processing lag. Is that cognitive load thing pretty universal for people stuck at this level?
Oh, absolutely. And the problem isn't just that it's slow for you, the speaker, that slow sort of unnatural delivery. It forces the person listening to work harder too, just to figure out what you mean.
Right, it breaks the rhythm.
It completely disrupts the essential rhythm and flow of a normal conversation. And that, maybe even more than a small grammar mistake, signals that you're thinking in a non-native pattern.
Okay, wait though. Before we just say never translate, didn't the source admit that your first language, your L1, can be helpful sometimes? It feels a bit like we're, throwing the baby out with the
I
bathwater.
think that's a really important nuance, yeah.
Yeah.
We'd be clear on that. While Northbrook strongly emphasizes abandoning direct translation as your main way of speaking,
Right.
other experts do point out that, well, bilingualism is complex. Things like code switching or just being aware of your first language can actually enrich the learning process sometimes.
So the L1 isn't the villain itself.
No, the native language isn't the enemy. It's the over-reliance on it as a constant crutch, like running every single thought through it for approval first. That's the problem. It becomes a liability when it stops being just a reference and starts being the mandatory first step for everything you say.
Okay, that makes more sense. Now let's talk about the quality of what comes out. Even if you somehow manage to push a translated sentence out fairly quickly, why does it still often sound, well, wrong, unnatural, even if the grammar is technically okay?
Right. This is where we get into negative transfer. That's the term linguists use for the mistakes that happen when you basically copy-paste the structures, the idioms, or even the cultural assumptions from your native language directly onto English.
Ah, so your L1 gives you a set of rules, but they just don't work for English, and because you're translating, you assume they do.
Exactly. You're applying the wrong blueprint.
And negative transfer creates those really weird mistakes, the ones you don't even realize you're making. The source had some great examples, didn't it?
Oh, they're fantastic. Sometimes wonderfully absurd. Like, there's a common Japanese idiom for being super busy, right?
Okay.
If you translate it literally, word for word, into English, you get the phrase, "I'd like to borrow a cat's hand."
Hang on, borrow a cat's hand. What does that even mean? It sounds like something from a surrealist painting, not I'm busy.
Precisely. Every single word is correct in a dictionary sense, but the whole phrase, zero actual meaning in English. It completely fails, what we'll call the chunk test later.
Okay, wow. And there's that French example, too, the potentially awkward one.
Ah, yes. So a French speaker wants to say they're full after a big meal. They might use the phrase "je suis plein."
Makes sense.
But if they translate that structure directly, word for word, maybe thinking "I am full," well, in French, plein can also casually mean pregnant or like stuffed in a
Oh,
very physical, non-food way.
oh dear.
Yeah. So that direct transfer creates a phrase that, while you can translate it, carries this completely wrong, maybe funny, maybe inappropriate meaning, totally misses the mark.
So it's not just catchy idioms, it's actually fundamental differences in how language shapes our perception of reality.
That's the really deep insight here. Take the Japanese words for this and that. English basically has two, this, near me, and that, not near me.
Right.
But Japanese has core, sore, and are. These reflect different cultural ideas about proximity. Is it near the speaker, core, near the listener, sore, or far away from both, are?
Okay, so 3 levels of distance.
Sort of, yeah. So if a Japanese speaker is watching TV, maybe a cooking show, and sees something delicious on screen, they might say kore wa oishiso, meaning this looks amazing. They use core because visually via the screen, it feels close to them.
But in English, we'd say.
We naturally say that looks amazing. We use that because the food isn't in the actual physical room with us. The Japanese speaker is applying their L1 logic based on perceived closeness, but the English logic is based on shared physical space.
Wow. That really shows how deep negative transfer goes. You're making a mistake based on a completely different worldview built into the language, and you have no idea because it feels perfectly logical based on your native tone.
Exactly right. Okay, so we've nailed the problem. Thinking word by word, rule by rule, leads to slow processing and unnatural, sometimes weird output.
Right.
So here's where it gets really interesting. The solution. If fluency isn't just about cramming more individual words, it must be about knowing how words typically go together.
Which brings us neatly to the core idea native speakers rely on, chunking.
Correct. Fluency comes from using predictable language patterns, chunks.
Huh?
These are like pre-built units of language.
Like common phrases, idioms.
Collocations, common sentence starters, things like, in spite of the fact that they get stored in your memory as one single item, not separate words.
And the key insight is that native speakers aren't consciously checking grammar rules for these common combinations. We just grab the whole chunk off our mental shelf.
Absolutely. Think about, say, make a picture versus take a picture. Both are, technically, grammatically possible phrases. But no native English speaker talking about photography would casually say, make a picture. Why not?
Because take a picture is just what we say. It's the standard phrase.
It's the standard chunk. It's prefabricated, it's dominant. When you learn these chunks as whole units, you dramatically reduce the mental work involved.
And that's the ultimate payoff, isn't it? Learning these functional phrases, these chunks, as single units just completely bypasses that need to lean on your L1 structure. It cuts out that huge cognitive effort.
It totally does.
You basically eliminate that whole 3-step translation nightmare.
You do. You shift from analytical processing, constantly checking rules, to automatic processing, just recalling the whole unit.
Yeah.
And that explains why so many traditional English classes, the ones obsessed with endless vocabulary lists and complex grammar drills, often don't actually produce fluent speakers.
Because they aren't teaching the chunks people actually use.
Exactly. They aren't teaching the language as it's really spoken in these ready-made chunks.
Okay, so moving from what the solution is chunking to how the brain actually supports this, we need to touch on the cognitive nuts and bolts. The source talks about fluency itself involving something called activation.
Yes, and this is so important for understanding why practicing consistently matters so much. See, when you know more than one language, they aren't just sitting politely in your brain waiting their turn.
They were competing.
Constantly active, constantly competing, your native language is always there, ready to jump in. The competition is fierce. And when the activity level of your native language is almost as high as English, that conflict slows you right down.
Right, it creates interference. So To fight that sluggishness, the brain uses these suppression mechanisms to try and quiet down the native language.
It tries, yeah, but that takes a ton of cognitive energy.
And that's the mental fatigue we feel.
That's exactly what that feeling of mental exhaustion is. So to stop relying on translation all the time, English needs to be kept highly activated. It needs to be, as the source puts it, bright and awake or buzzed.
Keeping English buzzed. I like that. So how do we do that? How do we keep English active and push the native language back a bit? The source mentioned two key factors for activation: quantity and recency.
That's right. The first one is quantity of exposure. It's pretty straightforward. The more English you consume and use even passively, like listening or reading, the stronger its position becomes in your brain's processing hierarchy.
Like piling English onto one side of a balance scale.
Exactly that analogy. You need enough sheer volume to tip the balance decisively towards English.
But volume alone isn't enough, right? That's where the second factor comes in. Recency of exposure. And this is where we got that brilliant analogy. The dynamo light on a bicycle.
It's such a good one. If you stop pedaling that bike, the light dims really fast.
Yeah, almost immediately.
Your English fluency is the same. It's not a static thing you achieve and then just have. It needs constant input to stay bright. If you only use or study English infrequently, say a long session every Saturday but nothing else all week, the activation level drops way down between sessions.
So your brain has to work hard just to ramp it back up every weekend.
Exactly. It's inefficient. But frequent use, even if it's just short, daily, low-pressure contact with English, keeps that dynamo spinning, keeps the light bright. It prevents the brain from defaulting back to translation mode out of habit.
Okay, that makes total sense. Which leads us to the really practical question for everyone listening. All right, I get the theory. How do I actually stop translating and start activating English? The source gives 5 specific, actionable ways to train yourself, things you can start doing today.
Yeah, let's break those down. The first couple are really internal strategies. Number 1 is engage your fantasies.
Okay.
Fantasies.
Yeah, you have an inner life, right? You daydream, you make plans in your head, you rerun arguments you wish you'd handled differently.
Sure.
Instead of trying to force yourself into mechanical practice sessions, just consciously let your imagination run wild in English in those everyday mental scenarios. Ah, I see. So there's no pressure to be perfect. It's just internal chatter. You could imagine talking to your boss in English, planning a trip, arguing about politics.
Exactly. If you just allow those thoughts to happen naturally in English, you're training your brain that English can be the language of immediate internal thought, not just something you perform externally.
Cool. What's the second one?
It builds right on that. Switch your inner dialogue. Basically, narrate your routine tasks to yourself in English.
Like when you're making coffee.
Yeah, exactly. As the kettle's boiling, just think, okay, kettle's boiling. Need to grab the milk. Did I buy those new beans? Simple stuff. It develops a really natural, low-stress thinking flow that's tied to what you're actually doing.
It's kind of forcing English to be the default voice for mundane things.
Okay, what about the learning process itself? We keep coming back to chunks. Right. Number 3, and this is crucial, focus on chunks. You have to make learning these pre-made language units, collocations, idioms, common sentence patterns your priority. Stop focusing so much on individual words and then trying to assemble them later with grammar rules.
So if you hear someone say, I'm looking forward to it, learn that whole phrase as one thing.
Precisely. Don't just learn the word forward. Learn looking forward to it as a single block.
And that links to number 4, right? Focus on overall meaning and concepts.
Yes. Try to avoid constantly overanalyzing the grammar of every single sentence you hear or read. Your goal should be absorption, not deconstruction.
Just grab usable expression.
Grab usable expressions in their context. If you're always pausing to mentally conjugate verbs or figure out why every word is where it is, you're just reinforcing that analytical, translation-like behavior you want to break free from.
Got it. And the final one?
The 5th step loops right back to keeping that activation level high. Relaxed exposure more often.
The dynamo light again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Build enjoyable, low-pressure English activities into your daily routine. Watch films maybe with English subtitles at first. That's okay. Read something fun, not just textbooks. Listen to music or podcasts.
Keep the input constant but enjoyable.
Yes. That continuous, relaxed input keeps English highly activated without the stress that often comes with formal, forced study. Seriously, 5 relaxed 15-minute sessions spread through the week are way, way more valuable than one intense 2-hour grammar bash on a Sunday.
Okay, so we've covered the problem mental translation, the evidence like may and the negative transfer examples, the solution chunking, and the mechanism activation. Where does this leave someone trying to improve?
I think it leaves you with a pretty profound realization, actually. Fluency isn't really about just piling on more and more information. It's actually a journey of unlearning some really deeply ingrained bad habits.
Like the translation habit.
Right. You have to consciously shift your focus away from just accuracy, which leads to those slow mental gymnastics, and towards automatic communication, which you get through learning chunks and keeping your English
Yeah.
activated.
Yeah, you get good at what you practice, right? If you keep practicing slow step-by-step translation, that's what you'll be good at.
Hmm.
But if you practice engaging frequently in a relaxed way with whole native expressions and focusing on the overall meaning, your brain will adapt and start to automate that.
It absolutely will. And here's a final, maybe provocative thought to leave you with. This comes from the broader research on bilingualism.
Okay.
That intense mental effort you feel, the effort of managing that constant competition between your languages, suppressing one, activating the other, it's not wasted energy.
Really. It feels pretty draining.
You can be.
Yeah.
But that internal competition, that constant juggling, actually seems to enhance other cognitive skills. Things like your ability to focus, to switch between tasks, maybe even your creativity.
So struggling with two languages actually makes your brain stronger in other ways.
It seems so. Your commitment to thinking bilingually, even with the challenges, provides real cognitive benefits that go way beyond just speaking more fluently. It's giving your brain this incredibly sophisticated workout day in and day out.